Hello dear learners, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we will be talking about AspectJ example. In our previous video, we had already spoken about the theoretical concepts of what exactly are the different annotations that you need for implementing an AspectJ example using annotations. So today we will be seeing an actual example of it, of how to write the whole code, and we'll be seeing it step by step of how to implement it. So let's get started. So we will be seeing the whole steps of what exactly do we need to do here in this particular PPT, and then based on those steps we will actually write the example. So let's look at the steps that we need to do. Firstly, we need to configure our pom.xml, and we need to make sure that the pom.xml has AspectJ related dependencies. As you can see here, I have mentioned the Spring AOP dependency and the AspectJ Weaver dependency. So we need to make sure here the version is going to be version 5. Okay, so we need to make sure that the Spring AOP and AspectJ Weaver, these are the minimum which are required. So these two, these are mandatory. You need to have these two dependencies in your pom.xml. So we need to make sure that these dependencies are present. So this is going to be our first step, that we'll go and check that pom.xml has these dependencies or not. If not, we will configure them. Going further, we need to configure the AspectJ auto proxy annotation in our XML file, that is something like this, AOP AspectJ auto proxy. So we need to make sure we are configuring this in our XML file, our configuration file. Once that is done, along with this, you also need to make sure that you're configuring your beans, all the beans, okay, in the XML file. So the aspect bean that we'll be creating, the target bean, or the actual business method that I have, those beans are also configured. You need to make sure. Okay, so that needs to be done. Then we need to create a Java class and annotate it with the aspect annotation. So this is going to be our actual aspect class. So you can see here, annotation aspect is the class that I have, and it has this @aspect annotation on top of it. So you need to have that. Then you need to create a method inside this annotation class, or this aspect class with we'll be naming it as car service, and it needs to be annotated with the point cut annotation. Okay, this will make sure that we are creating a point cut for it. Okay, and then this we will be using in our advice methods. Okay, later when we create an advice method. So here it needs to be something like this. You need to have an @point cut and annotation, and you need to create the execution on our car service method. So this car service method will ideally not have any logic inside it. It is going to be a blank method. We'll see that once we start writing the example. So we need to do that, and then we need to create a before method here. Okay, and this particular method, this before method, is going to be our actual advice method that will be running before our car details method, because that's what we mentioned here. Car details method is the target method on which I want my advice to run. Correct. So this particular before method will run before the car details method, because we'll be annotating it with the before annotation, something like this. So we'll be having this before method, and this will have a before annotation, and we'll be mentioning the name of that car service method that we've defined here. Okay, so that basically needs to be passed here. Okay, so this is what we need to do here. Along with this, now this approach that you saw was an explicit approach, okay, wherein we were explicitly creating a separate point cut, and then we were using that point cut method here in the before annotation. So this is a very explicit approach. I had spoken about the implicit approach also in my previous video. In case if you have not seen that particular video, you can go ahead and check that video here. I'll share the link. And you can check that video wherein I had spoken about the explicit approach and the implicit approach. Okay, so you can check that out. Now, so this is, as I said, the explicit approach. We'll also write one more method here, the after method, and we will annotate it with the after annotation. And here in the after method, we will have the implicit implementation. As you can see here, I am not mentioning @car service the way it was here. You can see there was a car service, and that is what I had mentioned as a point cut. But here I am implicitly mentioning it here. So this is also a way in which you can do it. You can implicitly mention here itself in the after annotation, and it will work. So we'll be creating this after method, and we'll be annotating it with this after annotation and the whole expression that I want. Okay, so that is what we need to do. Going further, we will create our test class, which is the same only. We've been creating it over so many examples now. So it is going to be the same simple class path XML application context object, and then calling the get bean method using the car. So this car bean has to be defined inside your either XML file or in some app config class. So you need to do that, and we'll be calling the car details method. So in this case, before and after both will have a method, right? So before car details there will be a method executing, and even after car details there will be a method executing. So in both cases it will be there. So this is it. These are the steps that we need to follow to implement our whole example. I know there are a lot of steps, but we'll go in detail, we'll go step by step, and it will be easy for us to understand. Okay, so that is going to be there. So without further ado, let's get into the exam. So just to speed up the process and focus on what exactly is important for us in this particular example, I've already created this annotation demo project here. Okay, and inside this annotation demo, the first step, that is, we need to make sure that whether the Spring AOP and the AspectJ Weaver dependencies are included or not. So I have already included those dependencies here, the Spring AOP and the AspectJ Weaver. And as I said earlier, the Spring version is 5.0.0 release here. So that's already done. And the next step that we need to do is we need to go in the application context XML or the configuration file that we have, and we need to add the annotation AOP AspectJ auto proxy. So this is the annotation that we need to add. I'll just close it here only in a single tag. So this is one thing that we need to do. You can see I have already defined my car and my tire beans here, because I already have those classes created here in model. I already have my car class, I already have my MRF tires class and my tires interface. So these are already present from my previous project. So since these are already there, I have already configured them in the XML file. Okay, once this is done, you can see that here in this particular code we also need to later on add our aspect bean. So what we'll do, first thing is we will right click here and we'll say new and we'll say class, and we will name this as annotation aspect. Okay. And we will put it inside a package com.learning, okay, .aop. This is going to be the package inside which we'll put it, and that is it. We'll say finish. Once this is done, we need to add an @aspect annotation to this. So we'll say @aspect, and then we will figure out with the imports. We'll take up whatever imports are there. So this is the next step, that is we need to create an annotation aspect class, or this could be any name, that could be your choice, and it needs to be annotated with the aspect annotation. Then we will create our first point cut. So what we'll do here is we will say @point cut, or rather first we will say public. Now this is important, make sure you're writing it like this. It should be public void car service. Okay, it should not have any arguments, plus it will not have any implementation code inside it. Okay, so this is how you need to make sure you're doing it. Then you need to say @point cut. Okay, and inside this you need to say execution, the way we had written last time. Okay, it is going to be the same way. We'll say an asterisk, and then we'll say, so we need to pass the path of our car class and the method in case if you want specific method if you want. So we need to write this whole path here. So we need to say com.learning.model.car details. We are being specific here, as I said in my previous video also. You can be more generic if you want, and 2 dots here. So this is what we need. Also we need to import the point cut annotation, so we'll import it here. So this is our car service. Then what do we do here is we will create our before method. So I'll say public void, and I'll say before method. Okay, and inside this method I'll keep it simple, and I'll just write a sysout statement here, and I'll say this is an explicit approach. The way, because that is what we are doing, right? We are using it as an explicit approach. So one thing is what I'll write here, and then I'll annotate this with the @ before annotation, and inside this, in double quotes, I need to say car service. So this whole thing along with the brackets should come. Okay. So I'll just mention that here. Okay, and that is it. So this is our before method. Then what we need to do is we need to create another method, that is after method. This is for the implicit approach. So I'll say after method. Okay, and then inside this I'll say again sys out, and I'll say this is an implicit approach. Okay, I'll just correct my English a little here. So I'll say this is an explicit approach, and here I'll say this is implicit approach. Okay. Also, then I will be annotating this. So I'll say @ after, and in this case I'll be directly mentioning the whole expression here itself. So I'll say execution, and then I'll say bracket star space and com dot learning dot model dot car details, and then 2 dots here, and that is it. So I'll be mentioning here this, and I need to import the after annotation. So I'm importing the after annotation here, and that is it in this particular class. And then what we need to do is we need to create a bean for this particular class in our application context.xml file. So what we'll do here is we'll simply create a bean. We'll say bean, and this can end here itself because we just want an ID, and so I'll say annotation aspect, and the class I'll mention. So I'll say class is going to be com.learning.aop.annotation aspect. So this is what I'll mention here. So this is it. This is the configuration that we need to do. Now let's just go ahead and try to see if this particular code is working. But before we could do that, I'd like to show you this test class also that I've already kept ready here. So I already have this test class ready, wherein there's a class path XML application context, and it is referring to my application context.xml file. And I have already created this car object using the getBean method, and I'm calling the car details method. Okay, so this is already done. We'll just try to run this code now. So let's run it and see what the output is. So as you can see here, it is calling our application context.file and loading the definitions. And here you can see it is calling this is an explicit approach and this is an implicit approach automatically before and after the code. So this is the example of our annotation aspect. Also, if you just want to quickly go through this expressions, I would want you to pay more attention here in both these point cut expressions, the way they've been implemented. So pause the video for a minute and make sure you're checking the syntax correct. This is where sometimes you miss these brackets and things. So it is important that you know the syntax properly. And that is it for today. Please like my videos. If you like my content, share it with your friends and family members, to whoever it is applicable. And please subscribe to my channel, and a humble request, please watch my videos end to end, complete videos, because I don't want you to miss on to those smaller details, important details that I talk about during the video. So request, please watch my complete videos. That is it. Thank you. Bye bye.